Welcome. I'm Peter Janowsky from the Ryan and Janowsky Financial Strategies Group, and this is another episode of Financial Strategies for Seniors. I have a very special guest today, Kristina Caputo from Wagner Funeral Home. This is something that we have not discussed on this show, and it's something that I know very little about, which is wonderful that we have this guest today. Kristy, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So you work for Wagner Funeral Home that is actually under another company that people may recognize the name.
Yes, so we are part of Dignity Memorial. Dignity Memorial is a network of funeral homes. We have just over 2,800 funeral homes, cemeteries, and crematories across the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico.
It's a big company, and I think name recognition says a lot. So tell me about yourself. How did you get into this business?
So I have been licensed just over 20 years. So I am a licensed funeral director. In New York State, you have to be a licensed funeral director in order to practice as a funeral director. I originally wanted to practice as a hairdresser in funeral homes. So I got a job in a funeral home right out of high school, answering the phones, working the door. I liked it, so I switched my major. I was doing liberal studies in Nassau, and here I am.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a nice story. So you're lucky that you love what you do.
Yes.
And are you in one specific spot geographically, or do you bounce around?
So my office is located in Hicksville at our Wagner location.
Okay.
We also have another Wagner location in Plainview, but I am able to work out of any of our funeral homes on Long Island. We have locations in Massapequa. We have some Jewish locations. We have, Miller Place, Deer Park, Babylon. We also have locations in the metro area. So I can practice anywhere in New York State because I am licensed in New York. And if I wanted to move, I just have to be licensed within that state. And then I can work in any of our locations that are under Dignity Memorial.
Got it. So, question. Actually, first I got to tell everybody what we're really going to be talking about is prepaying and pre-planning funerals today. And there's a lot that goes into it, which I said from the beginning I don't know about, which we're going to get into. And since our audience is mainly seniors and maybe children of seniors, I get this question a lot when I'm talking to other people sideways in my business, all different types of planners. Do they make house calls?
Yes, we do. We make house calls. We will go to assisted livings, nursing facilities, as far as making the arrangements. And something that I know that you and I have spoken about, we also do seminars for the community to let them know that pre-planning is available, because most folks do not know about pre-planning and that it's available.
Yeah, and I think you and I discussed this once before, and it's like it seldom comes up in my planning my business as well, because it's not a comfortable subject. It's almost like at times talking about life insurance for some people, it's not a comfortable subject. And what I'm focusing on lately with my clients and other audiences is how to expect the unexpected. And unfortunately, no matter how much we plan in life, there's always that, and we didn't see this coming. And not that I'm taking a quote from a wonderful human being there, but like Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Right.
So, and that's what I stress with my clients and people I talk to is that, choosing to do nothing is a choice, but usually a poor choice. But as much as somebody should have a plan, they should also be flexible and understand that life can change on a dime. So if you were going to sit down with someone and they were going to investigate the possibility of prepaying or pre-planning, where do we get started?
So what we like to tell our families is that set the appointment with us. They can come in and explore their options as far as what they would like for their funerals. And that starts with what type of services do they want? Do they want to have a visitation in the funeral home? And they don't have to have a visitation in the funeral home. It's what they want. Next would be, do they want to have a religious service? And that would be, do they want to have something in a church? Do they want to have something in a synagogue? Are they going to be buried? Are they going to be cremated? Do they have cemetery property? And if they don't have cemetery property, do they want to go to a Catholic cemetery? Do they want to go to a non-sectarian cemetery? Do they want to go to a veteran cemetery if they are a veteran? Then we would go into, their the services and the merchandise, beyond that. So the casket, we would choose the casket. We would choose their prayer cards. We would choose their flowers. We would go into the monument. We take care of everything. So when you're pre-arranging a funeral, everything gets selected because you're going to be paying for that at that time, and it goes on the contract. You want to make sure that everything is chosen.
Let's back up for a second. When you say paying at that time, paying when you sign the contract or paying upon death?
Correct. No, you're paying ahead of time.
Right up front.
Right up front,
Okay.
During that pre-arrangement period, because you're guaranteeing yourself the funeral home charges
Right.
at prepayment.
Right. I understand. Is there any ability to do installments and pay over time?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So we offer payment options. You can pay on a monthly basis or on a yearly basis. For monthly, you can put a $500 deposit and pay up to 5 years monthly. For yearly, you can put down, $2,000 or more and pay on a yearly basis, or you could pay in full. The monies are not held with the funeral home. By law in New York State, we are not allowed to collect funds before someone passes away. The monies are held with the New York State Preplan, which
Wow.
is part of the New York State Funeral Directors Association. New York is a trust state. We are not an insurance state. A lot of other states, when you prepay your funeral, they're insurance states. We happen to be a trust state. We're very regulated by the FTC when it comes to prepaying your funerals. So the funds are held with the New York State Preplan until you need the services of the funeral home.
So I'm assuming because of that, there's no extra charge to do installments.
No,
It's going to come out the same.
it's going to come
whatever.
out the same, correct?
So circle back for a second.
Sure.
You offer all these services. What if somebody wants to be buried in a cemetery, but they don't have a plot? How well do you get involved with that? Are you like the broker for a plot?
We are not. So in New York State, again, funeral homes and cemeteries are separate, unlike other states where the cemetery may be on the same property as the funeral home. So we can refer them to the cemetery. We can give them the phone number, and they will then contact the cemetery and go to the cemetery and purchase that cemetery property. It's completely separate.
Right.
We are not able to help with the purchase of the property. And also, you wouldn't want us to do that because you want to be able to go and purchase that cemetery property on your own, because the salesperson there will be able to show you what's available as far as space, location, things like that. You want to be able to purchase that. And that's something personal as well, because it's not one size fits all.
Right. That part I get. So you mentioned in New York State a few times, and I think that's a really good piece of information. And I think everybody should be aware that New York State does have a lot of regulations, a ton in my business as well. There's a lot of business that I can do outside of New York that I can't do in New York, product-wise. And I truly believe it's to help the consumer. It's to protect the consumer. So I don't have too much of a problem when someone says, gee, they're not letting me do this, but I can do it in Florida, I can do it in New Jersey. Well, guess what? It's for your own protection. That's what I kind of hope it is. So going back to the state thing,
Yeah.
here's a what if. What if somebody prepays and then decides to move out of state?
So they can either transfer their funeral to the state that they're living in if they decide they don't want to be buried here in New York any longer. The funeral arrangements are 100% transferable and 100% guaranteed to another dignity firm, one of our sister chapels, or if they don't use one of our sister chapels, that private funeral home will accept the funds but they don't have to do it for the same price
Okay.
because they're not part of our
Oh, that's
organization.
fair. Okay. All right. That's good. So I mentioned this only because I just heard about it. There's a difference between prepaying and pre-planning.
Correct.
Okay. Let's go over that.
So the difference between prepaying and pre-planning. When you prepay, you are locking in the cost of the funeral home today, not locking in the cost of your outside charges. Outside third-party charges being your cemetery opening, your church, your death certificates, your permit fees. Reason being, those charges increase on a yearly basis. We have no control over them, so we can't guarantee those for you. Pre-planning, you're simply coming into the funeral home, letting us know your wishes, and we're keeping them on file for you, and there are no funds exchanged. So those costs will continue to increase, and you will just pay for the funeral at that time. So there is no benefit to you or your family because you have not locked in the costs.
Okay. Talking about locking in, this is a contract.
Correct.
Right. So again, what ifs? What if somebody changes their mind? Either if they want to pull out, or I decided I don't want to be cremated. I want to be buried. I mean, I'm trying to say just
Sure.
Changes.
Absolutely. So when you make a prepaid funeral, there are two types of contracts. There's revocable and irrevocable. So at this point in our lives, we would have a revocable contract, meaning we can change our contract at any point in time to upgrade it, meaning add on, or we can downgrade it, meaning take away, or we can cancel it because it's revocable, okay? Now, if you and I were to go on to Medicaid, that contract would have to become irrevocable, meaning we cannot take away or cancel that contract at any time because of Medicaid purposes. Reason being is that Medicaid considers that contract an asset when it's revocable. So once a contract becomes irrevocable, the only thing you can do to change that contract is upgrade it, meaning add on, because you're not able to downgrade it, because you're not able to get any funds back to it.
Sure, it makes a lot of sense. Actually, I'm just a question just hit me. So I'm not going to hold you to it either. You may not have this information, but on average, is there a number of how much a family can save over time by prepaying? Because obviously I could talk about this, a lot of what I do as far as planning goes, the time is a big part of my strategy, or anyone's strategy. It's how I work with this. Somebody might have 1 year, other people looking at 30 years. So if let's just say somebody prepays 5, and you have mortality rates, so like 5 years in advance, 10 years, 30 years, would you be able to say, yeah, guess what you just paid for now, if you paid this in 20 years from now, most likely the cost will be so-and-so. Do you ever have those numbers?
On average, funerals double every 10 years.
Double every 10 years.
If not less at today's day, because we see the cost of inflation and what it is.
So that comes out
currently.
to that comes out to somewhere between 7 and 7.5% a year.
Well,
Going
currently
up.
today,
Yeah.
the cost of a funeral, 1-day visitation, religious service, going to the cemetery, and not
You're talking about the
a
whole
veteran
package.
cemetery.
The whole
Yep,
package.
a
right.
whole package, and
Right.
not a veteran cemetery, and I'll get into that in 1 second.
Right.
So a 1-day visitation, church, and a cemetery opening, on average, depending on, the casket you choose, your floral arrangements, you're looking at about $15,000 to $18,000 for all of those items. That's going to double in about 10 years. For all of those items.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I didn't think it was that high rate, to be honest with you. That's a big rate. That's
And
about
again,
7.2% a year.
And again, the reason I'm saying that's going to depend on your casket and your floral arrangements and if you have a limousine is because those items, that depends on what the family chooses, because there's different costs involved in those. Now, if you're going to the National Cemetery, you will not have the cost of the cemetery involved because the veteran and the spouse are entitled to a free burial in a national cemetery. So they get the burial, the grave liner, and the headstone at no cost to them because of the veteran.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. I got to tell you something. There is sticker shock in many industries. And a quick story, when I was 24 years old, I lost my father. I'm an only child. And I no one knew about prepaying. He had cancer. It was just a mess trying to take care of everybody, which is fine. But I had sticker shock when I went to plan the funeral, and they took me and my mom into the showroom to pick out a casket. When I saw the price, I thought the casket should come with automatic transmission and air conditioning.
Yes.
People don't know. And this is part of the unexpected.
Right.
This is the education. I think people should get an idea, because that is one of the biggest points I've ever heard in planning, is that a cost could double in 10 years. And for most families, it's a need.
Right.
I know things have changed over the years. People are spending less. I mean, I'm assuming that there is, I could be wrong, but I'm thinking maybe more people are choosing cremation, maybe less services. Is there a trend? I mean,
during COVID,
it has to do with cultures too and religion.
It does. During COVID, we saw a lot of cremations.
Okay.
That was because of the situation
Right.
that families were in, so it was situational. Now, people are getting back to the more traditional services. But I think it really depends on the situation that the families are in, both financial and also what the person who passed away wanted.
Right. So there's no trend. It's always all over the place.
It is.
Right.
It really is.
Okay.
And it's a personal preference. But when someone has their arrangements already in place, the families just follow through with what that person wanted because they arranged it themselves.
Right. So let's just say someone comes to you and they want to prepay. They don't have the money right now, and they say, "Hey, listen, I do have life insurance though. Can my life insurance pay for it when I go?"
The life insurance can pay for a funeral at the time that someone passes away. The life insurance cannot pay for a prepaid funeral.
Yeah, and obviously, I'm guessing you probably have to look at the policy as well, because if it has to be the right policy that's going to be like a whole life policy. It's going to last forever, not a term.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what we recommend to the family is that life insurance is really to help the survivors when someone passes away for whatever the family has to deal with, medical bills, household bills after someone has passed away. So when they're sitting with us, we let them know, if you can at all get this in place now and leave that life insurance for your family to help them live so the way that they're accustomed to, or to help with whatever bills may be when you pass away, do that. And a lot of times folks will do that. Or they will say, you know what, we really can't, this is what we left it for. And, they'll revisit it a couple of months later or a year later. I've had families do that. We've had families cash in their life insurance policies to then come and prepay the funeral as well.
I'm sure if there's a small policy and if it helps, I get it. I've seen.
They do.
Right. Is there any other costs that a family would come across that's not covered by prepaying or pre-planning?
So if you're on Medicaid and you have an irrevocable prepaid funeral, you're not allowed to put catering on your pre-plan. That is not an allowable expense by Medicaid. Other than that,
Catering
meaning if you're having a luncheon after the funeral, or if you're at the funeral home and you want to bring food in between your visitation hours, or if you want to have food sent to the home. That's the only expense that Medicaid will not allow. Otherwise, if it's a revocable account, you're allowed to put that on. So there really is not an expense that we are not able to put on the account.
Right. So if people are going to shop around, obviously this is, when you're pre-planning, this is hopefully not going to be a last minute thing.
Right.
What are some things to look for? Should they compare certain things? What should they be going in? What should they know?
So every funeral home is competitive as far as their pricing goes. And, we have people who come to us, and we just ask them, to make sure you're getting the same exact services, and we let them know exactly what we offer. So we have 100% service guarantee, as we discussed before, that if you're with us and you don't get something that you want, we will 100% refund that to you. We have national transferability to any of our funeral homes across, United States, Canada, Puerto Rico. We offer to all of the families that we service, it's called the Compassion Helpline. So for 1 year from the date of someone's passing, the immediate family gets
like a bereavement?
So yeah,
situation?
It's almost like bereavement. They get to speak with no less than a licensed MSW.
Wow.
24 hours a day for 1 year. And anyone who comes to the wake outside of the immediate family gets to speak to someone for 3 months. We also have where if you have somebody who's out of town and they need to come in, they can call a phone number and we will help them book flights from out of state.
Concierge service.
Pretty much.
I got to tell you something. That is some incredible added value, offering that emotional support.
It is.
I don't think people know how people can suffer from a loss.
And they do. So it's not discounted, and we let them know it's not discounted. But when people are grieving, they don't want to deal with the airlines. So you call this number, and we'll get you or your family member on a flight to come back home. So we have a book. It's called the Personal Planning Guide. It's a comprehensive guide. We will get that to the family. They can fill it out, put all their personal information in it. Family member picks it up, and they know all the information that their family and loved one needs to know as far as what needs to be taken care of. So we have a lot of things that we offer to our families and their loved ones that other funeral homes don't.
Right.
And that adds the value to what we do for our consumers.
I think that should be at the top of the list. I'm sure anyone who's watching this has suffered loss at some point, and I think that should be at the top of the list, because I think it comes in under the radar. Many times we don't realize just how people are hurting after a loss like that. And I'm sure you have a number of stories to talk about as well. But the question I had, I just actually lost my train of thought, because I was a little thrown off because I didn't know that part existed, and I think it's tremendous. But I'm going back to the what ifs, right? So what if somebody changes their mind completely? What if somebody dies sooner than expected? I'm trying to say, is there flexibility in this? Can someone come out and make big changes?
If they pass away before the account is paid in full?
all sorts of things. What happens?
So if someone passes away before the account is paid in full, the funeral balance is due by the day of the funeral.
Okay. And if somebody changes, what if somebody changes their mind? 3 years later, they say, hey, listen, you know what? I changed my mind completely. I don't want anything.
That as long as it's revocable, then they get a full refund,
right,
including any interest that accrued in that account.
When and you mentioned irrevocable and irrevocable, does an attorney have to come in, or are these contracts just that Medicaid recognizes it doesn't have to be part of a trust or anything like that?
No.
Nothing complicated?
No, not at all. An attorney does not need to be involved at all, because again, these accounts are part of the New York State Funeral Directors Association. They are funeral trust accounts.
Okay.
So they're recognized.
So if somebody does, at the end of the day, there's really not that much pressure. If somebody changes their mind and listen, I'm prepaying, putting $15,000 into this so my family doesn't have to, and then 10 years later they say, you know what, everything changed, I just want it back.
I just had 2 people call me, and they were like, listen, Chris, we're in Florida, and we had everything set up for New York and for Florida. Right. And they said, listen, Chris, we changed our minds. We're going in a different direction. Their accounts were revocable, and they said, we really just want our money back. And I said, okay, no problem.
Beautiful.
I sent them the forms. They had got them notarized, because they have to be notarized when you are asking for a refund. They have to be notarized. They sent them to me. I sent them up to the pre-plan, and they're going to get their refund checks in the mail.
So here's the toughest question. I think the toughest question is about the approach. All right, so now I do planning. I plan with families, I plan with businesses, and there are some touchy subjects because it has to do with mortality and it has to do with the facts of life. So
Right.
does anyone ever come to you and say, listen, I think this would be a great idea for my Uncle Bob or my parents or whatever. I have no idea how to approach them.
They do. So, as I said, I've been doing this for a long time. So I've been pre-planning for the past 12 years. So previous to that, I was doing everything else as far as funeral directing. And, I tell them, just sit down, have a conversation with them and just explain to them that, this is something we need to do. It's beneficial to you. It's beneficial to me. It's going to make it easier when the time comes. If they really don't want to talk about it, let it sit for a little while, revisit it. If they don't want to talk about it again, that's it. Just give it a little while.
Right.
They'll come around, I have people who come in and they're angry and they don't want to talk about it. And then by the time...
So you do get that far. I was going to ask you, does anyone, almost like an intervention? We got to talk about
No, I
this.
have people who just come in and they're angry and they don't want to talk to me. And then by the time they leave...
For themselves?
For themselves or for their family
Interesting.
member. And then by the time they leave, they're laughing and we're laughing. And they're like, wow, that was great, Chris. You made it so easy. And I'm like, well, thank you, Or I have people come in and it's like a party in the room, and because you have to make it easy for people. And I have people who thank me, and that comes with experience. Number one, you have to be knowledgeable about your job. Number two, you have to know your audience and you have to know who you're speaking with. And if you
Well said.
if you don't know those two things, I'm not going to say that you're not good at your job, but you're not going to have a relationship and a rapport with those people.
You're not going to provide the service that they need.
And
I understand
you need
that.
to provide that
Right.
service. You
Right.
need to do that. So when you're providing a service, you need to do that. And especially in what I'm doing, you need to have that with your families. That helps, and that makes it a lot easier. These people are coming in to plan, whether it's for themselves or whether it's an imminent situation where it's going to be hours or it's going to be days or, weeks. I mean, unfortunately, I have people who come in and it's an imminent situation and we're making arrangements.
Which is, I get that.
And they get a phone call while they're sitting with me that the person passed away. I mean, that's how imminent it is. And, you really need to know who you're sitting with and what you're doing. And
That's for anything.
So,
any profession
yeah.
provides a service. And, I'd love to get into some stories with you, but this has been so good. We're running out of time. So just do me a kind favor and let us know the easiest way to reach you.
So the easiest way to reach me, you can reach me in my office, 516-935-7100, or you can get me on my cell phone, 516-712-5690.
I can't thank you enough. I learned a tremendous amount today, and we're going to talk further about it. And I have to end the show now, and I want to get this straight. So the traditional ending of the show is whether you need the help or not, may a hand of a friend always be near. I'm Peter Janowsky with Ryan and Janowsky Financial Strategies Group. This is Kristina Caputo, and we'll see you on the show real soon. And thank you.
Thank you.